And of course, because we're in the noisiest and slowest and most gaseous car in the Masai Mara, it's very difficult to sneak around. Sherry, no, the water's not too cold for them. And we've got one down. Come on, guys. There we go. We've got a semi-crossing, everyone. There we go. That's it, guys. In you go. Well done. Bungay. We have a crossing. We have 3 or 4. Yeah, let's go for it, Em. Shall I sneak slightly forward? Were you happy? Slightly forward. Right. Welcome everybody to the Masai Mara in Kenya, where a crossing of the great herds of wildebeest has just begun. My name is James Hendry. We've got Bungay on camera. Ask us any questions you like. A beautiful scene here, the quintessential migration scene. 1.2 million wildebeest have arrived in the Masai Mara out of the Serengeti, and this scene here is what so many people travel to Africa to see every single year. It's possibly one of the most iconic scenes of the African wilderness. All these wildebeest now streaming down into the Mara River, and thankfully for them it seems to be relatively crocodile free and the river's very gently flowing, and so most of them will get across completely safely. Most of them will get across completely safely. It is the most magical thing to see. The abundance of life, the anxiety in these animals, how long it takes them to jump into the water. It's just the most special thing. Odyssey, you say, I actually can't remember what you said. Sorry, I'm just so overwhelmed by this. Oh, one of them took a bit of a fall there. Odyssey, you say this is so exciting. It is. It's the most exciting thing you can see, I think. There are some parts of the river where there are hundreds of crocodiles. There are some parts of the river where the banks are so steep that lots of animals break their legs. There are some parts of the river where they get so cluttered up and caught up in the rapids that they drown. 6,000 of these animals drown in this river every year. But this is a nice gentle crossing for them. It's the beginning of the migration season, so a very nice start for them. Oh, it's just magic. Look at that. And they just keep streaming on down. It would be surprising if no one got injured in this crossing, because with such a push, with such a crowd, and they're just streaming in, more and more and more of them are coming in from the other side of the river and plunging down into the water, which must be quite chilly, but it's not too cold, and in fact in places it's shallow enough for them to just walk across. They don't even have to swim, and that's because we haven't had a lot of rain over the long rain season, and we haven't had much actually during the course of this dry season. It often storms here in the afternoons, but of late we haven't had much. I'm just going to keep quiet now so that you can listen to the unbelievable sound. They're jumping onto each other, but as yet there don't seem to be any casualties at all. Isn't that sound astonishing? Bellowing, burping, lowing. David, I can't see any crocodiles here. We saw one in this part of the river earlier this morning when we were waiting for another crossing. But as yet, No crocodiles in this particular area. Let me just sit up on the dashboard and then I'll get a better view of what's going on here. Now, there are a couple of zebras streaming in, but the rest of them seem to be turning round. The zebras often freak out the wildebeest and make them either turn around or take the plunge. But there are more coming now. There they come. Still haven't seen a zebra come across yet. Here comes one or two. There we go. Oh, big jump there. Laura, you say it's just mind-boggling. It is. You can't conceive of an abundance of life like this unless you've seen it. It's really difficult to fathom. I liken it almost to being at a rock concert, an enormous rock concert, where you're in amongst 60 to 100,000 people, and you suddenly get a sense of the abundance of humanity and how many people there are, even though that's a very tiny proportion of it. Being in amongst these herds gives me that same sense of how abundant life is out here, or how abundant life can be in the wilderness. The zebras are now crossing as well, and they're still streaming in. I will just tell you, we won't be able to show you because there are a couple of vehicles in our way. There are some wildebeest that seem to be going against the grain and thinking about trying to cross the other way. Laura, you say the height of the jumps are amazing. Yes, not so much here. This is a very gentle crossing. There are some parts of this river where the animals will leap 10 feet, sometimes 20 feet down, breaking their legs, drowning onto each other. It can be very nasty. But I don't see anyone drifting down river feet up in the air, which is often what you see at some of the other crossings. And while those other crossings are tremendously exciting to watch, you know, the ones with the very steep banks or when there are crocodiles involved, it very shortly becomes harrowing to watch, because the pain and suffering to which some of these animals are subjected is quite appalling. But there's nothing like that here. Everyone's crossing perfectly. One particularly gormless fellow trying to re-climb up the bank there. I'm not sure if you can see that. Tim, you say, is this the funnel effect? I don't know what the funnel effect is, but I'm assuming yes, there is a kind of funnel effect here. Basically, it reaches critical mass. It's just like bursting a balloon, and once it starts, it's very difficult to plug the leak, if you like. They're still streaming in. We must have watched a few thousand come through, at least. And for those of you who are watching this for the first time, it's one of the phenomena that I think is least understood in biology, because there is grass both sides of this river, and these wildebeest will recross the river 3 or 4 times, maybe even more than that, during the course of their migration season up here in the Masai Mara. But it's unclear to me why they need to, because there's grass both sides of the river. And it just seems to be a compulsion that they have, that they really find difficult to shake off. Oh, there are a couple of big jumps coming in through the gap there. I don't know if you can see those. Yeah, the sort of right-hand side of your screen. And still they pour in. Thousands and thousands and thousands. Tweety, I don't think they're jumping from high enough to hurt their bellies when they flop into the water, but yes, I imagine if they jump from high enough, it could hurt them. This is so amazing. You might also be able to hear a donkey-like braying, and that of course is the zebras. Well, long-lived fish, you're in a minority of humanity. You said it's the first time you've ever watched this. Most people will never see this, and even fewer will see it in the flesh like we are doing now. It's just, it leaves one speechless, really. The other thing to note, of course, is that so many people come here every year hoping to see what we're seeing here. And they spend a lot of money, save up and come to Africa to try and see this amazing phenomenon. And if you're not here at the right time, and it's impossible to predict the right time, you don't see it. You still see a lot of other magnificent things, but this iconic scene is not something that is predictable at all. And you know, we've spent many hours in the last few days sitting on the banks of the river waiting for them to cross, and have seen very little evidence of it, simply because, well, we don't really know why. The variables that make them cross are not really well understood to us. However, I have a small theory, and this is not based on anything other than thinking, so it is not based on empirical evidence. I think that when the numbers of animals on one side of the river in a substantial enough area become concentrated enough, I think that the grass becomes sufficiently unpalatable because of the amount of dung and urine on it, that the wildebeest decide to move. Now, they either decide to move to the east, in this case, of the plains on which they've been grazing, in which case they'll move away from the river, or they decide to move west, in which case they are fronted by this river, and they must either cross it or turn around, walk back through the plains of dung and urine, and then into some clearer stuff. And I don't know that they're intellectually capable of making that choice once they reach the banks of the river. So I think that you may well find that the grazing lands on the banks of the river become so unpalatable that eventually the drive to move away becomes so strong that they do. So that's just a theory. I don't know that it's true. It's not even a theory, it's an idea. Well, Tammy the zebra don't take advantage. They often lead the migration, you know. They are supposed to be the ones that clear the long grass so the wildebeest can carry on and come up behind them. They are definitely a different protagonist in this amazing theatre that we call the Masai Mara. They are more angst-ridden. They're not more anxious, but they're more angsty, so they're much more likely to bite or kick there. One, I don't know if you managed to see that, but one of the wildebeest just got a nasty kick from a zebra. They are much more vocal in terms, well, yeah, as individuals, they are more vocal. So they shout at each other in a much more strident way than this gentle burping that the canoes do with each other. And there just seems to be an energy of, they're wound up almost, these zebra. And they come into a crowd of wildebeest and they either make them run across the river or they make them run away from the river. They definitely change behavior, they change the vibe when they come in. Now, yesterday we saw far greater numbers of zebra than we're seeing now. And I don't think it's particularly surprising necessarily that the zebras have finished on these plains, the wildebeest have come in, and now they're deciding to move away. Carol, no, they won't take a break. They'll just cross until they've finished crossing. So, it just depends how big this herd is and whether any other animals away from this particular herd decide, well, this looks like a good place to be, and then come and join them. As you can see, they're all walking across there, and just in case you don't see us when we're up on the northern crossings where the behemoth crocodiles are likely to take their toll, this ability of their them to stand on the ground almost saves them from crocodiles, because if they can stand, they can kick and they can jump off the ground. It's when they're out of their depth that they're truly vulnerable to crocodiles. Mary, no, there are no lions in the wings. We'd know by now. They would have jumped out and grabbed one of them by now. So this particular crossing, there was a lion that killed a wildebeest here 2 nights ago, but at this particular crossing now, no lions. Nobody is panicked. We're just going to go wide and we're going to look around to the other side. Oh, you're on a wide, so sorry. Yeah, Marguerite, absolutely this is a successful crossing. So you can see there are a number of vehicles, and obviously everybody absolutely marveling at this tremendous spectacle. As far as the wildebeest is concerned, and we are concerned, this is the best kind of a crossing, because no one's dying. I mean, this has been going on, what, for 10 minutes? Maybe even more. It's amazing. And they're still streaming in. We got here just as it began, and only because we parked a long way off and managed to see the line of wildebeest coming down here, and we managed to find ourselves a very nice position. We're very lucky. I'm just going to do a count for you to show you how popular this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 40. There are probably about 60 cars here. Good, we're just live. I'm just going to sit down so that these people behind us can see what's going on. I don't think we should go anywhere. I think we should stay right here and wait till this finishes. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but it's too special to go away from. So let's just carry on watching and see how long and how many we get to see cross. Just look with my binoculars. I don't see any that have hurt themselves. Yeah, Carol, I tend to agree with you. When I first got to the Masai Mara, I wanted to see those big crocodiles catching animals, and the wildebeest jumping off those tremendously steep crossings. Because there were scenes that I'd seen on documentaries, and I'd found them so amazing. But after a few times, watching the trauma of these animals being caught by crocs or jumping down and breaking their legs, others drowning in the rapids, I must agree with you that this is the kind of crossing that you want to see. An exuberant celebration of abundance. And the predators will have their turn, don't worry. Everyone has to have their turn. Well, Rachel, yes, there are so many young ones. 400,000 wildebeest are born on the southern plains of the Serengeti every year. I think about 200,000 make it through the year. And so you probably find that of those 200,000 that die, most of them are dead already, and they would have made it up here. So yeah, there are 200,000 or so 6-month-olds in this group of wildebeest. Hear that noise? That's the wildebeest call, and at least the zebra's calling. It's a sort of donkey-like chirping, if you like. It often is accompanied by a bit of a bray at the end. If you heard that sound, you'd never know it was a zebra. And the vultures are wheeling, hoping for some action. Well, that's what I was saying, Pat, that the zebras, I don't think they're more nervous, but they're more angsty. They're more wound up, much more likely to lash out. Much more likely to kind of go charging into a situation and then charging out again. I think it's slowly starting to quieten down now. 1, 2, 3. And just as quickly it'll go quiet again. Yes, Mary Kay, that sound is amazing. Zebra call, so unlike a horse's call, isn't it? A little bit more donkey-ish. There are a few more coming down. Thinking about it. And I just want to give a little shout out to that grey-crowned crane pair. You see that? There's the grey-crowned crane pair there that must be thinking to themselves. I imagine them being like an old couple in a seaside village that has a very quiet, pleasant, gentle life, but for the Christmas period when everyone comes to town and basically the place turns into a chaotic carnival. And that it must be exactly what those cranes are thinking as these thousands of wildebeest go running past them. They must be one of the few species that really dislikes this time of year. You can see how many vehicles there are there, how many people are enjoying this. Of course, how many people are looking at us and others in this lineup thinking, gee, if only we'd been a little quicker off the mark. Now, Tremaine, you're absolutely right. Tremaine, the elephants are very much like those cranes. They do not enjoy the carnival season. There are a lot of them around, but they'll stay away from these herds of wildebeest. And I suspect because of the dung and urine again, the fact that the grass becomes inedible to them. And so what they tend to do is head towards the escarpment, which is behind us, quite a long way to the west, and they head up into the escarpment, or they'll stick in the forests on the banks of the river, but they'll avoid being out on the plains where these thousands of animals make their living, grazing, dunging, and urinating, of course. I don't think urinating is a word. Peeing is, though. And of course, all of that waste is food for the grass. And without it, these plains wouldn't look anything like as fertile as they do. And still they come. I don't see them charging towards the river anymore, but they're still jumping in. Yeah, Cheryl, you say this is spectacular. So it is. And I don't see one fatality, which for a crossing is very impressive. Even for these little 6-month-olds who must learn to swim. One baby tried to get back out the water and has now been swept along with the rest. Alrighty, we're losing signal, so we're going to wrap it in an astonishing abundance. quite an amazing example of how magnificent, how iconic East Africa is. If you want to keep on watching, please do so. You can do that on YouTube. You can just go to Safari Live and carry on watching the safari.